Today is Saturday, March 2nd, 2019, and you're listening to the World Socialist website. India and Pakistan Tobogganing Toward a Catastrophic War by Keith Jones. India and Pakistan, South Asia's rival nuclear-armed states, are teetering on the brink of a full-scale military conflict. Early Tuesday morning, Indian warplanes attacked Pakistan for the first time since the 1971 Indo-Pakistani War. Striking deep inside Pakistan, they destroyed what New Delhi claims was the principal terror base of the Jaish al-Mohammed, an Islamist group involved in the separatist insurgency in Indian-held Kashmir. After a long period of confusion, as it assessed the damage and strategic implications of the Indian attack, Islamabad vowed a strong military response. Pakistan, it declared, would not allow India to normalize illegal U.S. or Israeli-style attacks inside Pakistan, whether mounted in the name of retaliation for or preemptive strikes against Kashmiri insurgent attacks. The next day, Indian and Pakistani warplanes engaged in a dogfight over the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir, after Islamabad launched what New Delhi claims was an unsuccessful strike on Indian military installations. Both sides are claiming to have shot down at least one enemy plane in Wednesday's encounter, with Islamabad presenting a captured Indian pilot as proof of its claim. The U.S., China, Russia, and other war powers are now publicly scrambling to avert the eruption of an all-out war, a war they concede could quickly spiral into a catastrophic nuclear exchange, even were it to be confined to the subcontinent. Yet even as they counsel restraint and make offers of mediation, the great powers, themselves locked in, to use the Pentagon's term, a new era of strategic competition, are trying to use the South Asian war crisis to advance their own geostrategic interests. Washington, in particular, has used the standoff to further its efforts to diplomatically and militarily encircle China. It publicly greenlighted India's attack on Pakistan as self-defense, and is using the current crisis to underscore the strength of the Indo-US global strategic partnership. Adding to the explosiveness of the situation are the interconnected socio-economic and political crises buffeting the two states, headed respectively by Narendra Modi and his Hindu supremacist BJP and the Islamic populist Imran Khan. Elected Pakistan's Prime Minister just 7 months ago on promises of jobs, development, and increased social spending, Khan has seen his popularity plummet as his government implements IMF-demanded austerity. Modi and his BJP are shamelessly using the war crisis to muster votes for India's multi-stage April-May general election. The BJP is accusing the opposition of imperiling national unity for not ceasing all criticism of the government and for not trumpeting its claims that the strongman Modi has thrown off the shackles of strategic restraint in India's relations with Pakistan. With the full support of the military, the corporate media, and virtually the entire opposition, the Modi government has rejected Khan's offer of talks. New Delhi is insisting, as it has for years, that there will be no high-level interactions, let alone peace negotiations, between India and Pakistan until Islamabad demonstratively capitulates to New Delhi's demands by cutting off all logistical support from Pakistan for the Kashmir insurgency. A nuclear catastrophe in the making? No one should underestimate the danger of what would be the first ever war between nuclear-armed states. Since the 2001-2002 war crisis, which saw 1 million Indian troops deployed on the Pakistan border for 9 months, both countries have developed hair-trigger strategies, with the dynamic impelling rapid escalation. In response to India's cold start strategy, which calls for the rapid mobilization of Indian forces for a multi-front invasion of Pakistan, Islamabad has deployed tactical or battlefield nuclear weapons. India has, in return, signaled that any use by Pakistan of tactical nuclear weapons will break the strategic threshold, freeing India from its no first use nuclear weapon pledge and be met with strategic nuclear retaliation. This would play out in a relatively small, densely populated area. The center of Lahore, Pakistan's largest city with a population in excess of 11 million, lies little more than 20 kilometers or 12.5 miles from the Indian border. The distance between New Delhi to Islamabad is significantly less than that between Berlin and Paris, or New York and Detroit, and would be traveled by a nuclear-armed missile in a matter of minutes. A nuclear exchange between India and Pakistan would not only kill tens of millions in South Asia. A 2008 simulation conducted by scientists who in the 1980s alerted the world to the threat of nuclear winter determined that the detonation of 100 Hiroshima-scale nuclear weapons in an Indo-Pakistani war would, due to the destruction of large cities, inject so much smoke and ash into the upper atmosphere as to trigger a global agricultural collapse. This, they predicted, would lead to 1 billion deaths in the months that followed South Asia's limited nuclear war. Whatever the immediate outcome of the latest war crisis, and events could easily spin out of control in the next days or weeks, it exemplifies how the breakdown of the post-war geopolitical order and the resulting surge in imperialist antagonisms and interstate rivalry are inflaming all the unresolved conflicts and problems of the 20th century, a century in which capitalism survived the challenge of socialist revolution, but only by dragging humanity through 2 world wars, fascism, and countless other horrors. Partition and the historic failure of the national bourgeoisie. The Indo-Pakistan conflict is rooted in the 1947 communal partition of the subcontinent into an expressly Muslim Pakistan and a predominantly Hindu India, a crime perpetuated by South Asia's departing British overlords and the political representatives of the rival factions of the native bourgeoisie, the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League. Partition defied historical, cultural, and economic logic and unleashed a firestorm of communal violence in which 2 million people were killed and another 18 million fled India to Pakistan or vice versa. But it served the cynical interests of the rival ruling elites of India and Pakistan by bringing a bloody end to the mass anti-imperialist upsurge that had convulsed South Asia during the preceding 3 decades, and by giving them, as part of the independence partition deal with London, control of the British colonial capitalist state machine with which to meet the threat from an increasingly combative working class. Unable to find any progressive solution to the problems of the masses, the Indian and Pakistani bourgeoisie have for the last 7 decades used their strategic rivalry and communally laced nationalist appeals as a mechanism for diverting social anger in reactionary directions. The open wound that is Kashmir is testimony to their common bankruptcy. The Indian bourgeoisie has subjected the population of Jammu and Kashmir, India's only Muslim-majority state, to 3 decades of military occupation and expresses consternation at that continued mass popular disaffection with Indian rule there, even as it celebrates a party and prime minister implicated in anti-Muslim pogroms. As for Pakistan's venal ruling elite, it has run roughshod over the rights of Kashmiris over whom it rules, and has manipulated the opposition of Jammu and Kashmir to bring forward the most reactionary Islamist elements. For a working class-led movement against war and imperialism. Over the past 2 decades, the nature of the Indo-Pakistani conflict has been transformed. It has become enmeshed ever more inextricably with the U.S.-China confrontation, giving it a massive new explosive charge and raising the threat that an Indo-Pakistani conflict could draw on the world's great powers. Since the beginning of the current century, Washington, under Democratic and Republican administrations alike, has aggressively courted India, showering it with strategic favors, including access to advanced civilian nuclear fuel and technology and advanced U.S. weaponry, with the aim of harnessing New Delhi to its strategic agenda. The importance that U.S. war planners attach to South Asia and the Indian Ocean, the waterway that is the conduit for the oil and other resources that fuel China's economy, as well as its export to Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, is underscored by the recent renaming of the U.S. Pacific Command as the Indo-Pacific Command. Under Modi, as attested by India's opening of its bases to U.S. warplanes and ships, and its increasing bilateral, trilateral, and quadrilateral strategic cooperation with the U.S. and its principal regional allies, Japan and Australia, India has been transformed into a veritable frontline state in the U.S. military strategic offensive against China. Islamabad, during the Cold War Washington's principal South Asia ally, has warned in increasingly shrill tones that U.S. actions have shattered the balance of power in the region and emboldened India, but to no avail. Consequently, Pakistan has dramatically strengthened its long-standing military strategic partnership with China, which similarly fears the burgeoning Indo-U.S. alliance. Even as the U.S. seeks to cool the current Indo-Pakistani tensions, on the calculation an all-out South Asian war would at this point cut across its global objectives, it does so within the framework of its drive for world hegemony, including ultimately subjugating China. As part of this drive, Washington has made clear that it is determined to thwart China's efforts to make Pakistan an anchor of its One Belt, One Road initiative, and in particular to use the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor to counteract U.S. plans to economically blockade China by seizing Indian Ocean and South China Sea choke points. The workers and toilers of India and Pakistan must join forces in opposition to the criminal war preparations of the ruling elite. In South Asia, as around the world, the struggle against war is inseparable from the struggle against capitalism, against the rival nationally based capitalist cliques whose rapacious struggle for markets, profits, and strategic advantage finds ultimate expression in the drive for the repartition of the world, and against the outmoded, and in the case of South Asia, communally infused nation-state system in which capitalism is historically rooted. In opposition to the bourgeoisie's program for war, austerity, and communal reaction, workers and socialist-minded youth in South Asia should fight for the building of a working-class-led movement against war and imperialism as part of a global anti-war movement. Such a movement will only be built in political struggle against the Stalinist parliamentary parties in India, the Communist Party in India, Marxist, or CPM, and the Communist Party of India, CPI, and the myriad Maoist groupings. The CPM and CPI, as demonstrated yet again by their participation in the BJP's all-party war crisis meetings, are chauvinist, pro-military parties that are helping blind the masses to the danger of a catastrophic war. For decades they have functioned as an integral part of the Indian political establishment, helping prop up governments, many of them Congress Party-led, that have implemented neoliberal restructuring, pursued the Indo-U.S. alliance, and rapidly expanded India's military prowess in pursuit of the bourgeoisie's great power ambitions. The Maoists are steeped in nationalism and hostile to the struggle for the political independence of the working class. It is in the international socialism of Lenin and Trotsky, represented today by the International Committee of the Fourth International, and the fight to undo partition from below through the struggle for workers' power and the establishment of the Socialist United States of South Asia, that the workers of India and Pakistan will find the antipode to capitalist war and reaction. You can find all this and more today on the World Socialist website, wsws.org. This has been Douglas Allen for the World Socialist website.
The World Socialist website is published by the International Committee of the Fourth International, the ICFI, the leadership of the World Socialist movement, the Fourth International founded by Leon Trotsky in 1938. The World Socialist website relies entirely on the donations of readers and listeners for financial support. To give to the WSWS or to set up a regular monthly contribution, go to wsws.org/donate. We urge our listeners to join the International Committee of the Fourth International and one of its affiliated political parties and take up the struggle for socialism.